Hello, everybody. In this episode of the Netsphere podcast, I got the honor of interviewing Kevin Williams, who is the CEO of Balls.co, a men's hygiene brand that is completely taking over social media. We talked a lot about business, a lot about strategy, but we also talked a lot about life and his overall worldview. It was a really enlightening conversation, and I'm certain that you guys are going to enjoy it. So I just want to thank Kevin again for taking the time to do this, and I want to thank you guys for allowing me to have these conversations with these awesome people that I would have otherwise never met. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Yeah, I would love to just start by I want to know a little bit about you since we've never actually met. I mean, I looked at your LinkedIn profile because it was linked to your email. And I was like, whoa, this is not what I expected. I was like, this is crazy. So I want to know a little bit about your background, I guess. How did you get started in business?
Sure. Are we recording, by the way? Are you?
Yeah. Is that fine?
No, it's totally fine. I just
Cool.
whatever. How did I get started in business? Yeah, I'm a little older than the average internet hustler, right? Okay. In the dim days of let me roll back even further. So I got started as an entrepreneur in business school. So I went to a proper business school. I was on the straight and narrow sort of path. And I won a business plan competition. And it totally derailed what I thought I was going to do with my life and reoriented me to entrepreneurship. My very first company didn't really work out, but it came with seed money and it came with a lot of introductions to angel investors and venture capital investors.
Wow.
At the time, I lived in Washington, D.C., and I developed a reputation as a venture or an angel operator, possibly with an unhealthy tolerance for risk. I actually know the poster behind you. No risks is a risk.
Oh, yeah, right here.
Great say. And I spent a bunch of years running venture and angel-backed companies as COO, vice president of ops, manufacturing, whatever it might be. And I would often be the first real corporate hire that a founder had been running the company for a lot of years, and they'd burned a lot of money, and the investors needed somebody to come in and assess it and stabilize it and figure out what they were going to do with it. That was an interesting thing to do in your 20s. And I ended up shutting a lot of companies. I kind of lived, it was a little rough. It was a little rough to do, but more than anything, I really saw that startups in particular and funded startups tended to go about product discovery backwards. They would have an idea. They'd spend a lot of effort fleshing out that idea. Then the idea would hit the market, and then the market would decide if it would work. And then they put more and more money in it, chasing to see if it was going to work.
Yeah.
I think I recognized really early what the power of social media would bring to that equation. And I was a really early adopter of what now we call the MVP, the minimum viable product.
Oh, nice.
So Eric Ries and the minimum viable product, that was just starting to be written about as I was going through a lot of this. And the idea there is to constantly iterate and pivot. Well, I recognize that social media would present an opportunity to even take a step further back on that and figure out if an idea was going to work even before you had the idea or you had the product or anything else.
Right.
So I joke that I called it the mini minimum viable product. So it's not actually having a product, a pen that you can actually sell. It's having a concept of a cool pen that you could sell. Mocking up some landing pages, driving a bunch of traffic to it. I know your audience is savvy to digital marketing, so they're going to get it immediately. And that was the MO of internet businesses, is have a concept, test the concept, see if the concept's going to work or if it's going to have any sort of legs. And if it does, then go out and buy a small MOQ of whatever the product is and iterate from there.
That makes sense.
That quickly led to a model where just because of my network, I had a lot of opportunities with acquiring patents. So the way that I approached this mini MVP was I would look at patent opportunities, not business opportunities. And there were all of these crazy inventors out there who were great engineers, but couldn't market their way out of the box. So I'd find a patent I think, okay, this is interesting. I could see how this is going to work. And then I'd toss some traffic at the patent idea, sometimes, frankly, without even the patent owner knowing, because I wasn't selling anything. I was just
Yeah.
driving to a landing page and see if I could get a CTA and get a sense of what was actually going to work there, right? And then if it did work, then I'd license or buy the patent outright, and I'd start growing a brand off of that. I got pretty lucky with one of those acquisitions. Luck plays a huge part in success,
Definitely.
no matter what anybody tells you. It was this crazy water-powered brush that turned with a bunch of force,
Oh,
and it was used for cars, motorcycles, small children, whatever you wanted to clean.
I think I've seen
And
something like that, kind of like on a drill type of thing,
so
or
that's the drill brush. I'm totally not going to go down a rabbit hole of the brush and soap industry,
oh
but
god,
yeah, there's a product called the drill brush. This was this hooked up to a hose, so it was water
oh
powered. And I'm kind of an engineering geek, so like the underlying technology was super cool.
yeah, that sounds
I thought
cool.
it was really hard for somebody else to knock off. It was a utility patent. We'll talk about it more, but there was a good story arc to it. Like when I'm looking for an investment, I'm looking for a story that I can tell, which is super important now,
Wow.
right? That in the case of a brush, like you have a dirty wheel, you've got a dude or a customer who wants to overcome the filth, and they clean the wheel, and at the end of it, there's success. Like that
Yeah.
is every story that's ever written is like man, mountain, climb mountain, get over mountain. Like
True. That's
that's
the classic story arc.
yeah, classic Hollywood script writing. Like everything is basically that.
Wow.
And what is the story that I could tell in it? So that grew really rapidly. We ended up selling omni-channel to Walmart, to Costco, internationally. We were selling in a whole bunch of different countries. And much to my surprise, it ended up on Shark Tank. So I did the Shark Tank tour, which talked about something
Wow.
I didn't expect to ever do, which is like a whole separate topic.
Yeah, I'm sure
Beware
that's
those of
crazy.
you who build the carpet. It led to a lot of exposure, more growth, and a lot of pain. There's a whole backstory
Growing
about
pains.
no, not growing pains. I
Oh.
wish it was growing pains. It was that the Chinese were watching the show too, and they knocked off the product. Actually, they didn't
Mm.
knock off the product; they counterfeited the product, and that was horrible, absolutely
Right.
horrible. So we ended up with over 100,000 fake units that were floating around in the system, which hurt us reputationally, and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
We did sell it. It's funny. People are always like, "Well, why would you sell a good business?" 'Cause I was tired, like
Yeah.
fighting the fight like every day, and kind of feeling like I was getting kicked in the shins. It was a rough couple of years, but we sold that brand, recapitalized and sold that brand, and then that led to me putting together a bit of a fund to look
Mm.
for other companies that hit the sort of requirements that we were looking for. You got to be able to tell a story. The product has to be relatively simple. It has to have an AOV that's over $100. It has to be genial. Like the story has to be a good story. There has to be something that you have to tell. It's not too large, it's not too heavy. The old, can you take the product and throw it across the room and have it survive sort of test.
Right.
And we hit on an investment opportunity in balls. So that kind of brings us up to the present.
Yeah, I would
How
love
did
to
I end up
talk about that.
there?
How,
Yeah.
because that seems like I mean, as soon as you started talking about stories, the first thing that lit up in my mind was like, oh, balls is like an amazing, story, especially with the marketing that you guys are doing and everything. So yeah, if you could walk us through a little bit of how you got involved in that, that'd be awesome.
So I became involved in the brand in only June of 2021. The brand was founded hilariously by a guy named Tyler Ball, like literally the guy.
No
Ball.
way.
And his partner is Matt Edge. So Edge
Ball
and
Edge.
Ball, they were like born for this.
That's
to do
hilarious.
this. And they're two British lads, and they launched this back in about 2019, seeing the trend towards male grooming, and really did a great job building this brand identity. Like,
Yeah.
it's a strong, humorous take on this particular category, and because they had that last name, they were able to lean into it and get a bunch of global trademarks. So they actually had the trademarks for Balls, because it's not Balls, it's Balls Co. It is Tyler Balls Company, Balls Co. And
That's so
you
funny.
do some maneuvering with trademarks to manage to secure trademarks like those.
Wow.
So they grew pretty rapidly. Europe first. So this is actually, as American as I am and sound, and I'm dialing in from Park City, Utah. This is a British company. So it is an LTD. It is headquartered out of Cambridge, and it's sold primarily to UK and then Europe. So probably half the sales in UK, close to the other half in mainland Europe, with Germany and kind of Northern Europe being dominant, and then also selling in Australia, Oceania, and Canada. I'm not mentioning US.
Yeah,
So
that's
this is a
interesting.
that nobody had ever heard of over here, because it was dominant over there.
Do
It's
you
really
think
a
that was
pretty
a
big
good competitive advantage that they had? Because I mean, like Manscaped was probably at the time dominating like the U.S. market. I mean, they were on Shark Tank. They were running all these crazy ads. But I guess maybe in other parts of the world, people maybe hadn't even heard of them, and maybe that
They
helped.
hadn't heard of the category at all. So these guys had green fields that they could go after, when in the US, there were roughly 1,000 other little brands that were going after the same segment, with Meridian Grooming being probably the second player, spending oodles and oodles of money on paid acquisition. And you know how competitive the US market can be. So there's all of this frenzy of activity going on over here. And they were just like doing their thing, capturing market share, selling to Germans, selling to the French. And there really wasn't a whole lot of competition. So they were able to get a lot of early market share over there without having a ton of competition. Given that they were UK based and comfortable operating in that particular market, I think it's a pretty good strategic decision.
Yeah.
And they certainly produced a lot of revenue. So, they looked at the US, they forayed over a few times. They certainly tested the market. But without actually setting up US operations and fulfillment, they were shipping from the UK. So it was a tough test, like
Yeah.
10 to 12-day shipping. It's just not a good consumer proposition. A lot of costs involved and such. They were certainly going to go there. They were going to go to the U.S. eventually, but as consummate entrepreneurs, they were always looking for their next thing. So I
Yeah.
think they felt resistance. They had done the early, I'm not going to call it a smash and grab, but early market share grab in the UK, made a bunch of change, and decided, let's take on some investors and let them roll with it. And then we entered the party.
Awesome. So that was a really good decision on their part. I see on your profile you talk about, how you also have a deep understanding of Amazon. Is that something you guys are actively looking at? I mean, like on the investment front and even for your specific brands, like what's Amazon looking like for you guys?
Both. I actually own an Amazon management agency. Very
Oh,
small. I do some notable brands, mainly as like a coach type
oh,
consultant,
cool.
as opposed to a full turnkey type thing. I tend to train up internal teams so they can do their thing. So I'm very comfortable in Amazon.
Wow.
And I know we're going to talk specifics of TikTok right now, but when you're talking TikTok and you're talking the type of content first media that brands like mine are doing, you have your usual funnel. We are sitting at like the foam at the very top of the funnel, and not like top of the funnel. We're tippy top of the funnel,
Yeah.
and it's sort of an awareness space that brands like this never were able to play in. It's like, Coke or Ford. Like
Right.
Coke is they're trying to sell you the brand. They're not trying
Yeah,
to
the
sell you
polar
the
bear.
soda. Right? Yeah, polar bear type stuff, right? And brands in this space were never able to play there. Well, now all of a sudden we're not only playing there, but we pretty much have to play there. And
Oh,
as much as I loathe Amazon and the Amazon systems and the machine and everything else, it is such an important part of businesses like this, because when you're creating top of funnel awareness, like it or not, the two biggest product search engines in the world are Google and Amazon. And
Wow.
you can do a great deal of legwork on Google, but if you're not on Amazon, even if you don't want to be there, you're just missing out on that opportunity. So yeah, of course, we're fleshing out our the Amazon presence in
Cool.
the U.S. It's not actually live yet,
Okay.
because we just launched in the U.S. last week.
Oh,
So
really?
you're catching it, like you're catching this like
Wow.
right,
That's
very
crazy.
beginning.
No wonder. Yeah, because I started seeing the TikToks and I instantly was like so intrigued. I was like laughing while watching these TikToks. Like you said, it does. It's that's a good way to put it. It's like at the tippy top of the funnel. Like it wasn't even really any sort of ad. It was just more like entertaining content.
Yeah.
That's
And
super
believe
cool.
me, somebody who has been a direct response marketer for like 10 years, I had to restrain those instincts.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean my magic Facebook money machine is broken and isn't going to work? What do you mean? Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
have to invest all of this money in content and then hope that it's going to turn into anything. And I think one of the best decisions that I made as the organizational leader is to kind of get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take personal credit for what we've done, except that I saw that it was important. I saw that that's where the trend was going, and then step back.
Yeah.
And we invested really heavily in this content in quarter 1. You can see, I mean, it's all over the world.
Right.
This was not a small amount of money to spend to make this happen, and it is not based on immediate return. It's based on building that tippy top brand identity, which essentially lubricates the rest of the funnel.
Yeah.
So brand is now out there in a way that it wasn't previously. 50 million views that we have in the last
Yeah.
60 days, which awesome, right?
I mean, that's crazy. Yeah, to think about.
Yeah, and yeah, so we have 50 million views, but you know how this works.
Right.
That doesn't translate into immediate sales. What it does is it translates into a couple of different currencies. And I like to think of currencies, like what is the output that I'm getting here? Obviously, at the end of the day, we're not an entertainment company. And we are a product company. In order to keep the lights on, to do more entertaining content, we've got to sell stuff.
True.
So we have to make sure that we're engaging the customer. But when you're talking about that tippy top of funnel, the currencies that you're gaining are more followers. And as the flywheel is turning, we're like, the flywheel is turning for us. Like, we are going to really get a lot of followers in a short amount of time, which is awesome, right? And all of those followers can also be converted into leads in various ways.
Definitely.
So we're a lot about how we can create top of funnel lead forms that continue to engage the customer on an entertaining level and give us more of a shot or an at bat at selling them something later. But overall, what the whole thing does is it's just lubricating the funnel. So now, like, I literally before this call was on with our Snap rep, so launching a whole Snap campaign, which Snap is usually pretty dismal, but the demo of Snap crosses over so hard with TikTok that at least the theory is that we have brand penetration into these other channels. So when we get a little bit more commercial into the other channels, it's going to make that transaction easier.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow, that's genius. I mean, are you guys running TikTok ads at all, or just focusing on organic?
So of course, yeah,
okay.
we are running TikTok ads. They are much more, well, I'm not going to say much more commercial. They are more commercial because we recognized how important that engagement is. They do focus more on the product, and they are more UGC oriented. So getting away from the avatar of our awesome interview guy, like more onto the brand. That is an interesting challenge, because has the guy, our guy, his name's Oliver, he's an awesome dude, like brilliant comedian, super fun guy. Has he become the brand? like versus our little like circle that is balls. So you'll see as our ads come out that we're bridging that gap,
Mm,
and we're making Oliver part of the brand, which is great for him. We're making him
interesting.
famous.
Right.
Um, and thankfully we all like each other. So
Yeah.
the more of Oliver and his microphone interviewing style type thing is percolating into the rest of our advertising. Um, yeah, and we're also leveraging some of the newer tools in TikTok, and TikTok, it's just all so new, and
I know.
you probably know more about
Yeah.
TikTok tactical strategy than I do. But things like the ability to do dark posted Spark ads are
Oh,
really
yeah.
valuable to us, so that we're very sensitive, dare I say precious, about making sure that our primary feed stays organic and stays fun and stays on focus on task,
Hmm.
as opposed to polluting the feed with heavier handed UGC that's like forced into down people's throats. Because
Yeah.
remember, one of those currencies I'm after is more followers. And
Right.
if you interrupt that flow with buy
True.
stuff, they're going to stop the scroll. And when they stop the scroll, I don't get that extra like, I don't get that extra follow from somebody consuming all of our videos, because we're seeing that.
Yeah.
We have this one, like, we have several videos that are over 5
Yeah.
million,
It's building
right?
a lot of momentum.
It's building momentum, and it's just so cool to see it waterfall down into all of the other
Yeah.
videos, like all the way down to the system. So now it seems obvious to me, almost in retrospect, that if you interject something that's not on brand and not on theme, that stops that
Yeah.
waterfall. So you get 1, 2, 3 hits, too much of an ad, I'm out, right?
True.
Whereas if you keep it organic, they flow all the way through and they like all of your videos.
Right.
Now, again, entertainment, selling stuff. So like,
Yeah, that's a tough balance.
you're
I
gonna
mean,
gang.
something a lot of people do is they have, I'm more from the like smaller, like really aggressive marketing type of world, like drop shipping. I mean, I've gotten out of that slowly, but that's kind of where I got my start. And something I see a lot in this space is a lot of people will create multiple accounts. They'll have like 6 TikTok accounts and just go crazy on all of those accounts. And running ads from different accounts. Even kind of like back in the day, I remember doing on Facebook, I would do marketing on like fan pages, like health and wellness fan page, and I would run ads through that page instead of my brand. So things like that are really powerful. I really want to ask you something, kind of touching back on what you mentioned on the brands that you look for, or some of the things that you look for in a brand when you're going to invest, because I think that would be really helpful for my audience that's like kind of trying to start a business. I mean, there's a lot of different people that follow me, but I would say the majority are still in that stage. So could you go over again just some of the things that you would look for if you were to, well, at this point you're buying businesses, but if you were to like start something?
So yeah, I went over them a little while ago, but it's like a rubric of
Yeah.
scoring, and given the cost of acquisition. Okay, I usually put cost of acquisition and AOV is
Mm-hmm.
first. If you are going to have a business that is dependent on direct response advertising, CPCs these days are easily, 35 on a good day up to 75 depending on your vertical.
Mm-hmm.
So you either need to have an AOV that's well north of $100, or an
Yes.
LTV, probably an 18-month LTV that is well north of $150. I basically wouldn't consider a brand that's smaller than that. In fact, I passed on a brand just today.
Really?
It's so much goodness there, but I passed on it. It had good intellectual property. It had a great website. It used
Oh
to be
man.
doing a ton of money, but its AOV was like $45, and it was in like the women's accessory space, which is
Mm.
not, it's not an area that I'm like super intimate in.
Yeah.
So I would have to create this like influencer strategy that was on it. It would be so noisy, and it would be so hard to make money in it. So
Yeah.
eventually I just passed, because there's just not enough money in the transaction. And I think people tend to look at lower priced niches because they feel like they're more assailable. Okay,
Yeah.
I can afford this MOQ for getting myself going. But you pointed to drop shipping. Like, I hesitate to recommend dropshipping to anybody these days. I think it's
Yeah.
just super hard. But getting a product, like, do you want to sell, $15 headphones, or do you want to sell $400 headphones? And one is they might have the same technology inside. One's probably better than the other, but one is like a brand exercise, and you have to acquire so many fewer customers to make the whole thing work, and you can
True.
tell better stories. So that's the next part. So item 2 is the brand has to be genial. Like, just getting out there and trying to sell something random, like, I don't know, diffusers, or there are all these
Like a
like
humidifier. Yeah.
like trying to sell a commodity just sucks. That's why Amazon was born. So, like, you need to be able to tell a story and really lean into a story. And like with balls, I had no choice. Like, you
Right.
buy a brand called Balls. What are you selling? Like, I'm either going to go like down the like adult care angle, or I'm going to do like this, what we're doing.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to tell a story around it. And this particular one just had so much potential. It's
Yeah.
off the charts. But even the brush thing, like, cleaning a car, like making a guy feel good about himself because he cleaned his Camaro over the weekend. Like, there's a story that you can tell in there. So look at the story and make sure it's visual. Everything's visual in marketing these days. So can you tell a visual story that you can turn into video that is consumable? I generally look for brands that have some sort of a moat around them, like subscription businesses, intellectual property. I feel less good about just pure patent protection than I used to.
Yeah. You had to learn that the hard way.
But having a moat that gives you some defensibility is really important. So, having solid trademarks that you can fight off the other people. Then there's some of the logistics elements, like, man, so I sell an electromechanical product right now, and it's a lot can go wrong between
Yeah.
circuit boards and batteries and charging and all kinds of stuff. And it's a durable product. I mean, it's built to be dropped on a shower floor and not die, so that's good. But when you see products that are really delicate, I mean, postal services seem to be run by like Clydesdale horses or something like that. Like, stuff gets battered, stuff gets dropped, like your returns percentage is really high, and that can really eat into your business. And then the actual dimensions, I think this one is like so overlooked. Like, so our product packaged, complete, nice box, poly bag, was 15.99 ounces. If that thing weighed like grams more, it would cost me $3 or $4 extra per unit to fulfill. And
Wow.
that changes the economics in a lot of products. Like, I can't believe how much people overlook this. Like, if you can sell a product under 16 ounces, that is good, because you can ship it US first class and save a whole bunch of money, right?
Yeah.
If you can't be under 16 ounces, then you better be under 5 pounds, because that's the next bit. And if you're not, you better understand how you're going to deal with that, because with transport costs increasing, it's just going to completely eat your lunch. So, yeah. And I'm sorry. So the other characteristics would be scalability through accessories. So
like upsells, cross sells, stuff like that.
Sells, cross sells, catalog sales. So the brush, the hero product. So the trimmer is a hero product. The brush was a hero product. But like with the brush, I had replaceable heads, so it had a subscription element to it. But I also could get into the car detailing lifestyle. So I could get into soaps and towels and all kinds of other stuff that people would want. They only really need one brush, but they need all this other stuff that I now have permission to market to them. So durability of relationship. Cost of acquisition is so high, you need to have an LTV. You can't just be like, buy. You've got to form a relationship with your customer that allows you to sell them things over many months or many years.
Wow. I love this. This is crazy. This is like a master class in like building a business. I'm just really fascinated. I want to go towards something like a more selfish question, I guess, but I'm sure some people will get a lot out of it. So you obviously know how to systemize pretty well at this point. I mean, you're running multiple companies. I'm really curious, how do you systemize your business? Like, how do you go about hiring, for example?
So, it's one of those do what I say, not what I do things. The theory is, so I run EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is it's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman.
Huh.
And I'm a trained project manager, MBA, like all this fancy stuff. EOS freaking works. Like it does. It's all about being deliverables based and understanding. The way I frame it to an employee is like, we do quarterly goals essentially. And when they're trying to figure out what their goals are, first off, I don't do it for them. That's not a good idea. They need to know their job well enough. They have to understand what they of the next quarter would be mad at them of now if it didn't get done, because it's all about progress. Like, you walk into a new company and like, oh, they're idiots, they didn't do X, Y, and Z. Well, accountability is everything. It's you who didn't do X, Y, and Z in the last quarter that makes this quarter a huge pain, right? So understanding what your goals are out of the company. Let's just say, you have an entrepreneurial community, right? So people probably want to exit. That's sort of the goal. I may be running balls for a long time. It's really fun. But so you say you have a 3-year goal to get it to $1 million of contribution. Okay, back up. What do you have to do in year 1 to get you teed up so by year 3 it's going to be there? And then when you look at 1 year, what do you have to do in quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4 that's going to build up to that goal? And then you have to be uncompromising. You have to set goals that are achievable and time banded. So you only have 90 days in a quarter. So you can't just be like, I'm going to do 400 things. If you choose to do 400 things, you are going to get none of them done because you're going to spread yourself totally thin. So I am big on the idea of focusing in on the few. Every individual in the company focuses in on the few things that they have to get done, non-negotiable. Just the thing that people, I tend to think that I build pretty strong cultures. So thankfully I don't usually have to like let people go, but I have had to let people go because they just couldn't get stuff done and it's just non-negotiable. So yeah, if everybody's working up to that master quarterly goal and they understand their piece, it's like days are busy, the shipments are lost, like customs has seized this, like whatever's going on. At the end of the day, like if you need to choose what do I need to do next, these are the 5 things that I have to get done. Is my next choice related to those 5 things, yes or no? So when I'm hiring, I tend to hire for people who can operate independently and have a real curiosity about learning and advancing themselves. So I tend to also add requirements of basically continuing education. So I send people to conferences, I send them through classes.
Oh, that's cool.
Then I insist that they pass the knowledge, not just back to me, but through the rest of the team. And somebody who's not curious about that, who just is kind of slumming their way through their day, that's an immediate turnoff for me. So people who have drive and they want to learn and they want to figure stuff out, that's what I look for. How to find them, that's always the rub. We're fully decentralized. We have people in 9 different time zones.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty nuts actually. It's a little company, so it kind of runs 24/7. Making sure you find, so EOS has this whole thing about seats. So it's like roles in a company. And early in a company, like I sit in 8 seats in this particular company. And at a certain scale, those 8 seats will be filled by full-time people. At a smaller scale, you can't afford that. But you identify the seats, and there's a lot of crossover between them, but figuring out like who are the right butts in the right seats, and then looking for the right characteristics. And a wicked smart marketer is probably not going to cross over with a wicked organized supply chain manager. So you've got to find like where can you duplicate effort and where you don't. And I tend to work on referrals. So you build a relationship with your employees. It's a good environment. It's positive. Like a lot of good stuff is happening. And then lo and behold, you get a pretty good flow of applicants. I don't tend to do the low skill offshoring thing. So that's a little atypical in e-commerce. everybody wants this perfect world of, I'm going to pay $5 or $6 an hour for
Yeah.
somebody who's going to work 180 hours a week and get everything done, and it's all going to be perfect. And there are totally places in your org chart where that can work. But if you're looking for people to drive the business, finding low cost offshored people who are going to be able to help you drive the business, I have my doubts about it. And
Yeah,
if
that
you're going
sounds
to
tough.
go that way, you end up being the one who's everything, and then you're just filtering it down. And people are very successful with that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm sure you have 200 people who are in your audience who are like,
Yeah.
oh, I do that all day long and I make a ton of money. Totally. Like, it can work for different people. I think it's harder when you get into more creative, like content first sort of environments. It would just be hard to imagine me having, a back office VA type who was writing Western focused genital humor. Like,
Yeah, that might not translate very well. Yeah.
it's not gonna work.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I tend to think that too. I mean, most of my hires have always been outside of the country, but I've always gotten much better results with just paying a little bit more. I mean, instead of paying, $6 an hour, paying, 10 to $15 an hour, it's still really affordable for me. But you get like someone that can, like you said, I think you said it really well, that can drive growth for your business. So that's amazing. Awesome. Well, I want to ask you something else now that is a little more personal even, but I'm really curious about this. I always ask people because it's interesting to me, but what's your routine look like on a day-to-day basis?
What does my routine look like? So I live in the promised land. So I'm an endurance athlete. That's kind of my thing.
Oh, really?
I race my which is my own tie to the brand, by the way. Like, I'm clearly not of like the demographic who's going clubbing, but
Yeah.
the brand appeals to people for different reasons. And a married guy with 2 kids, trimming for sexual prowess type reasons is like probably lower on my list. It's about feeling good about myself and whatnot. And from a practical perspective, as somebody who's outdoors all the time, it's great hygiene. So it's like the hair club for men. I'm not just the founder. I'm a customer.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
But so what is I live in Park City, Utah, which is a ski town and a mountain bike town. And I moved my family here from Washington, D.C., specifically so that we could have a life that was balanced between what we do professionally. My wife is a high-end attorney. Have raised kids in a place that wasn't going to be a big city and give them.
What a power couple.
Well, she's a criminal attorney, so she's not very useful to me.
Well, maybe someday she might be.
No, she's a federal prosecutor. So
okay.
None of us ever want to meet her.
Yeah, true.
It's funny. I wish she was like a patent attorney or a tax attorney or a corporate attorney.
Yeah.
I'll bring like a contract to her and be like, hey, can you check this out? She's like, what? You want me to correct it for grammar?
Yeah, that's funny.
And, but we live in this great place, and we chose to live here because all of my companies I've built have been decentralized before it was cool. Before COVID. And,
before crypto.
Yeah, before crypto, before COVID. I mean, I certainly work hard. I'm up very early in the morning because, I have to get kids ready, and we have European staff. So by 6:30 in the morning, I'm like cranking and doing my thing. But I try to make time during the week for those like personal hygiene, like mental hygiene type things. So late afternoon yesterday, I went for a mountain bike ride because I live here.
Yeah.
As far as schedules and such, I am the anti-meeting guy because I recognize just how much life can be burned in meetings.
Yeah.
Sadly, there are a lot of meetings that are still really, really important. I only hold one staff meeting a week, and it is all deliverables focused. So that list of objectives, and we just go through them, bang, 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 bang. Is it on track or off track? And if it's off track, then we talk about it and we figure it out and get it back on track. But we don't do like briefing for my benefit type stuff. I have one-on-ones with functional leads, so platform manager, customer service lead, content strategist, supply chain manager, like, so they have their own focus, and some of them have teams, some of them are just individual people. And what I'm leaning into more are marketing related pods. So it's such a marketing heavy company.
Yeah.
And a thing that gets lost in these decentralized environments is just the creativity of all sitting in a room and whiteboarding stuff. And in my case, like, the brand's funny, so laughing about this, coming up with crazy ideas, whatever. And it's very, very easy. It's just like management moment stuff, that even though I manage by deliverables, and the deliverables are really important, you lose a bit of essential essence of a marketing engine if people aren't together sometimes. So we're working harder on trying to bring marketing pods together that integrate, like, the SEO people and the buyer people and such, so that they can all cross-pollinate ideas, as opposed to kind of mono-tracking and doing their own thing. Yeah, so it's always a busy week. As far as other stuff, compartmentalize my time. This is my main focus, to be clear, right now. This is full on. So most of my time is focused on this. I do, personality-wise, I find it a little hard to slide into the like passive investor role. It's just not the way I'm built. I'm very, very hands-on. And the entrepreneurial community is just full of all these people who have found, like, clever little like passive investment sort of opportunities. And I look at it, and I actually said this just yesterday on the mountain bike ride. I was with a friend, and I was like, yeah, I could buy a storage unit or something like that. But would I spend 8 hours a day trying to figure out how to maximize, like, profit in the storage unit? I probably would. And it's like, no, that's bad. I don't want to do that. That would suck. So I haven't quite found the mental place to be there. And I'm middle of my career, right? And the next part of it is that step up, where I am doing more active investment in other entrepreneurs, as opposed to becoming involved in businesses where I'm the primary driver.
Like, you're the CEO,
Then you're the CEO, and there is no such thing as a part-time CEO. Like, it just doesn't really work that way. Sometimes I do a better job than others. I'm big on project management. We use ClickUp for project management, and I'm working on structures where that ties the objectives to individual projects and things like that. I delegate a lot. Like, when people are good, man, I just get the hell out of their way. Like,
that's smart.
I set the budget, I set the objectives. I'm helpful if I can, but I try not to put myself in a position where it's my job to figure out their problems. And somebody who comes to me and it's like, has some kind of lame problem, it's like, did you Google it? That's like, don't do that. So it's I manage it somehow, and I've stayed married, and my kids seem reasonably happy, so it's all
that's amazing.
It's all good.
That's always, like, extremely impressive to me when people manage to live, like, a reasonably balanced life while being, like, a successful entrepreneur. I think Park City, Utah is a really cool place to feel more, like, zenned out. At least I would imagine. I'm kind of like you in that way. Like, I skateboard, I snowboard. Those are, like, my favorite things to do. So you're kind of living my dream in a way, which is really cool.
I get it in small increments because I work really long days. And thankfully my wife is understanding, but it's like, sometimes it's like a powder day and I can't do it. And I'm like, or I'm on the lift, like, texting.
Trying to get some stuff done. I can totally see that. Wow. So I'm curious, this is something I actually gathered a bunch of questions from my audience prior to this, just because I figured they would, be helpful in asking some questions. So I got some right here, and one of them is, what are some of your brand's tipping points in terms of marketing and driving traffic?
Oh, we're in one right now.
Yeah.
With leaning into the content first TikTok strategy is absolutely driving a ton of traffic.
Wow.
Now that the objective isn't getting the eyes, it's figuring out how to execute on them.
Yeah.
When I became involved in the brand, one of the obvious things that I looked at was doing like direct placements on Barstool Sports or Chive or something like that,
Cool.
and they're heinously expensive to do with, and they're just like top of funnel stuff. Here,
Right.
what we've done is we've created our own format for that, and now we can play with it. And with 50 million views, like we're getting the eyes. So
Yeah.
now it's figuring out how to gently overlay the product on top of it. The market landscape has changed so much. It's like I'm reluctant to talk about previous brands because what
Yeah.
worked 18 months ago, pre-iOS, just doesn't work at the moment. So I certainly beat my head up against the wall in the early days trying to make it work. A lot of people did. Right?
Yeah, for
Just
sure.
trying to make it work. We have good first-party data tracking in place. We use Northbeam, for the record, for really figuring out what's happening in the channels. And now we know, but now we know for sure it sucks. Not just maybe it sucks.
Yeah.
No. It truly sucks. So yeah, there's a lot broken over there, and things that were scale points before aren't scale points now. We are leaning heavier into top of funnel, like brand awareness in terms of PR. In terms of we're not doing any traditional media yet. We can't really afford that, but like eventually you might see us doing traditional media because our content's really funny.
Right. So it could
I
definitely
know that
be
doesn't directly answer the
recognizable.
question. It's just it's hard to say what is going to work and what isn't at the moment. I think the point is maximize on the traffic that you have, and that's going to be different for everybody for different reasons.
Right. No, I think that's a great answer, and I think again, just looking at your strategy right now for TikTok, you can see exactly like what you're talking about. And I'm really excited to see where that's going to lead even like a few months down the line, like when it's summertime and, people are even more looking towards, grooming and stuff like that. So that's going to be really cool. Now, I have another question that was from my audience that's really good. It's what are some resources that you'd recommend for people that are starting to build their own site/brand? I think you mentioned a few of them, like EOS. That was more for hiring and
Well,
stuff. But
that's leadership. Like if you're a one man band, like it's
yeah.
good to have an idea of what you're doing, but at the end of the day, your life's a checklist. Um, in that perspective, the one thing, like what's the one thing I have to get done today for tomorrow, like that snowball thing. That's like, old man on the hill stuff, but it's like super important.
Good.
Make sure
Yeah.
what you're focusing on is the right thing to focus on. As you know, as a drop shipper, it's never been easier to stand something up. It's never been harder
Yeah.
to grab eyes. I think authenticity is everything, and I really want to convey that
Wow.
like we are not just an entertainment company. Like we're making people laugh about something that is actually a serious topic.
It is.
Men feeling good about themselves, like having a robust sex life. Like these are important things, and we joke. Actually, we don't joke. This is like dead serious. Like we care about your balls more than you do. Like seriously, I have the best customer service people ever. Like we will go to the ends of the earth to like support people. I always gesture like this. I probably should. We're like supporting customers, and I hope that authenticity comes across.
Yeah.
And we resist the temptation to be highly transactional unless you have a highly transactional product. Like if you have something that requires building brand identity and brand depth, you really have to dive into it and be authentic. And that's like a pain point for us because of what I was saying about like message continuity earlier. Like now if I'm like, okay, now bye, like that's not the right thing to do for the brand. Like we have to find cleverer ways to engage that way. And TikTok in particular, and I do think the jury's out. Like people are making $1 gazillion, but it's really hard to identify them individually. there's a lot of anecdotes and not a whole lot of ground truth for a lot of people. But they're being very authentic. They're not overproducing. I would say in TikTok world, we get away with our stuff being overproduced because it's funny.
Yeah.
But most people are just being super authentic, and like being honest. Like little brands that are not even little brands out there that are like they have drops, like larger catalogs with drops. They're in a niche area and they have like interesting drops that happen. So Mini Katana is
I've seen that brand. That brand is so cool.
He has 1 million plus followers, and it's all about like anime, and it's a like a frenzied niche community, and he does these like clever little teasers about whatever anime character that's about the sword is going to drop, and that gives him a reason to talk to his audience that they care about, that they identify with. Like he's very, very good, and it's very authentic. He's a young guy. Like it is authentic. He's not just like fabricating this to make it work.
Right.
He doesn't spend time anywhere else. He doesn't have to. Right.
Definitely.
So how do you lean into what your brand is to make it authentic, to make an authentic conversation? So that's not a tool so much. It's more of a mental focus.
Yeah.
As far as the actual tools, the things I always recommend are basic data set. Like if you don't understand Google Analytics and what Google Analytics GA4 is going to do, get thee to Udemy and buy a course for freaking $15. Like $15, that's all it costs. And learn about how to use the data. Like I clearly have a data orientation, but it just shocks me how many people in this industry have no idea how to use like basic data.
Yeah.
Understand how people are interacting with your site, and you can come to conclusions about how you're going to iterate on the site. And it's like a few hours and $15, you have no excuse. Basic Photoshop skills. Like, I am not a graphic artist. I'm like barely can draw a straight line, but I'm pretty functional in Photoshop and Illustrator. And it has saved me so much money and so much time over the years, because I'd be using an outsourced graphic designer. It takes 24 hours to do whatever resizing or colors, saturation change or whatever. And just being able to tweak that stuff and do it myself. Like, okay, need to resize this, need to change it in a different format, bam, bam, bam. Like it's done, it's up, and I get to move on with my day. Like watch out for blockers in your schedule. And again, $15 on Udemy, learn the basics of Photoshop. Like this stuff is so accessible. It's crazy. Or use GIMP. I hate GIMP, but like use GIMP and so be it. Websites, basic Shopify is fine. Shopify has a lot of weaknesses, but its ecosystem is so strong as far as being able to plug apps in. Cautionary bit about apps is that they can really screw up your performance long term and make your life really hard. But as far as getting off the ground, it's so easy to get off the ground.
Yeah.
Other tools, Microsoft Clarity. Everybody talks about Hotjar, which does screen recordings and user recordings. Clarity is free. I mean, you're paying them by giving them some access to your data, and it's like Hotjar Premium on steroids and free. Yeah. So Hotjar's, I have nothing but warm, fuzzy feelings about Hotjar. I mean, good company, good guys, like whatever. But Clarity's free. And
that's cool. I've never heard of that. I don't know how. I've used Hotjar, Lucky Orange, all these things.
Yep. And Clarity marched in and they're like, oh, cool. We can give this away for free and use it as the data collection mechanism for other nefarious things. And,
really, whatever it is they do with it. Yeah.
Bill Gates isn't going to care about your data, I promise. Yeah, so those are some tools.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. I know that, you got a bunch of things you got to do. Where are you, by the way? Are you in like a WeWork or something?
Yeah, it's a co-working place.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a nice one.
That's fun. Do you usually work in like a co-working space, or do you work from home a lot of times?
I started to. All these years working from home, I was totally fine. But something about COVID, like I think my wife being home and just family was home, and it was just like too much.
Yeah, you needed focus.
Talk about all day. I'm like balls.
Yeah.
Balls. My wife is like, you've got to get out of the house.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's an important, and this has turned into more of like an entrepreneurial like discussion. But sort of life lesson stuff is, you surround yourself with smart people, and the bar raises. If you are the median of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Environments like this, and this one's very special because of where I am. And there are more CEOs, founders, hedge fund people. Like this is off the charts as far as the type of people in this one. but they're just like, I had coffee this morning with a guy that runs a high risk processor business. And, if you're doing rebills and you're doing, maybe you're a CBD person, or maybe you're doing adult or something like that, that's a great guy to know. And how the heck would I have met him without like networking around? No, we're having coffee at 6:30 in the morning this morning. Like, getting out, interacting, finding networks, finding your tribes, really important. So I like these conversations. I do guest lecturing at the University of Utah on like entrepreneurial development. I'm involved in the entrepreneurial incubator, and I mentor little companies. I even mentor at the high school and stuff, because it pushes me to like clarify how I think about things. And if you impart your knowledge on other people, we probably all know who Ezra Firestone is.
Oh, of course.
Smart marketer. Like, what is it? Give generously and profit is his sort of overall. Like, I'm a huge believer in that. Like, really engage in your community, talk to other people, surround yourself with other entrepreneurs, surround yourself with entrepreneurs from other segments. Be careful. If you look around a room and everybody looks like you from a generic bit, it's usually a dude somewhere in their 20s, like, careful. Like, you want to make sure you don't get like groupthink going on. You want to have other people from other demographics who are involved in the conversation to push you.
Wow. That's a really good point, because I mean, even just this conversation for me, even though to you it may be just like a normal conversation that you have with like, one of your friends, like to me it's been really eye-opening and mind-blowing. And I've never talked to anyone in your position. So this is really amazing. And I'm really grateful that just like me posting some video about this brand led to this. So yeah, that's just incredible.
You just never know, right? You don't know unless you ask.
Yeah.
And I saw the video. I was flattered. The way you thought about it was on point. And I sent it to my investors. I was like, this dude knows what he's talking about. This is somebody else independent from me framing the way that we're doing this in a way that it makes sense. And aren't you all super excited? Let's go raise some more money and take over the world.
Yeah.
That's helpful. So I enjoy these interactions as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for, coming on here and taking the time. I'm, really grateful again. And where can people find you? I guess if I don't know, maybe you don't want people to reach out to you, but
I mean, that's fine. I mean, I may not be like crazy responsive, but I'm easy to find on LinkedIn.
Do you have a Twitter or anything?
I do not. I have been told over and over again I should. I think I spend more of that bandwidth on like interpersonal stuff.
That's really smart.
It's just, it doesn't happen to be my thing. But yeah, I'm findable.
Cool.
I'm out there. And I do try and be helpful if I can be.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll stay in touch.
All right, man. Yeah, no, please do.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.